guys, Dr. Alison Bremner here with Cultivating Success. Tonight, I have Dr. Seth Ryan on here. We're going to be talking about what it's like to have multiple offices and multiple clinics and have a big team. Seth, I'm really happy to have you on tonight. Thanks for coming on.
Well, thanks for having me. This is really cool. I love that this is a business chiropractic podcast and not just a technique and we all slam each other's techniques podcast.
Yeah. Well, I got to tell you, man, I'm excited for this podcast. The longer I do this, the more people I meet, they're just full of shit. And I met you multiple times and you're as real as it comes. You're a real guy. So I'm excited about it. And I'm not going to be like tearing my hair out at the end of this podcast. So thanks for that.
Yeah, I hope that's the case. That's cool. Yeah, that's great. So little background on me. I grew up in chiropractic. I grew up getting adjusted from the time I was about 4 years old. My parents were not chiropractors. That's everybody's assumption. I just had a great chiropractor and he adjusted me my whole life. And so I decided to be a chiropractor, but I thought that, I would go to school and I would learn how to adjust people and I would then learn how to be a business owner. And then I would come out of school and make millions of dollars. And I lost half of that equation. And so I came out of school, I opened a practice in Kansas City and I fell flat on my face. I didn't know how to run a business, couldn't pay bills. And I had a super low overhead. Like looking back at that, I was like, holy cow, my overhead was, I think my total overhead was like $3,400 a month.
That's crazy.
And I couldn't pay that. Like that's how I had like this broke mindset.
Yeah.
And so I quickly realized like I better learn from somebody, just like I had mentors of teaching me how to adjust or teaching me how to speak in a public setting, et cetera, learning from somebody how to run a business. And so that's what I did. And now my wife's a chiropractor as well. We have 4 practices, 2 in Colorado Springs, 1 in Tulsa, 1 in Claremont, Florida, which is where our families are. So we opened them so our families could get care. So,
yeah, well, I think that one thing that I think it doesn't get talked about is you can have multiple mentors. You don't have to have one person. Like a lot of times I see someone is a mentor of them, especially technique wise, and like, oh, this person is amazing. They're teaching me technique. And then they think that they also can learn business from them, which sometimes you can. But I find that a lot of times some of these people who are like really into technique, maybe some of their business stuff isn't as good as someone else that would be teaching you business. And it's okay to have multiple different mentors for different things.
Yeah, I mean, one of the best things you can do is have a business mentor who knows business. Maybe they're not even a chiropractor.
Yeah.
Right. And then you can take the chiropractic principles and apply that. But I think the best mentorship that I got was learning how to run teams of people. And it's what makes a practice. It's what makes or breaks a business is the people that are running it. And so if we can put systems in place and then have people run those systems, then it's a pretty seamless entity. And then you say, oh, look, sorry, Ashley, you weren't running the system properly. You're not a bad person. You just weren't running the system properly. Let's run the system properly. And now we fixed the glitch in the wheel.
Yeah, I think so many times. And we were at Mile High talking on the success principles. We're talking to students. One of the things that they really asked us about was 1, systems, and 2, mindset. And I find that the number one thing that I talk to my associates and interns about is that mindset, that money mindset. So maybe can we talk about what your mindset was back when you were having that tough time covering that overhead and what you did to overcome that?
Yeah, so I've been broke multiple times in my life. I've only ever been poor once. And I'll say that to our associate docs that come in, and a lot of them don't get it. But the difference is that broke is a financial statement in your bank account, and poor is a mindset that you have about whether you have money or not. So like a person with a poor mindset could win the lottery and they would be broke within a year. There's tons of data on that, right? So that's a poor mindset that was given money, but they will make themselves go broke again.
Yeah, absolutely. Luckily from the very beginning, I had someone help me with that, and I've been broke many times, but I was able to cultivate a mindset, but it took like 2 years when I was broke and doing it. It's not an overnight thing. And to this day, sometimes I'll say something and I'm like, what? Why did you say that? Like that, that doesn't align with what you've been doing.
A lot of times, like, I don't know how your upbringing was, but I mean, we were broke and poor growing up. I was both. I grew up in a trailer in the woods of Oklahoma, and my dad worked his ass off, but we didn't have a pot to piss in, so to speak. We didn't really have much. And so I looked at me going to college and me doing well with academics or whatever as a way to escape that and get out of it. And I didn't know that the mindset part would follow me. And so I would do things to ruin my financial success that I did have, the little bit I did have, because I was afraid of having money. And I didn't know it. Like if you ask somebody if they're afraid of having money, they're like, well, of course not.
Yeah.
But then the second you give them a little bit, they'll go blow it and waste it on something. That's because they don't know what to do with it. They're scared of it. And like I had to fight through that mindset over and over and over. And it took me doing simple things like I remember we went to a business trip in Miami, and we were like on South Beach. It's beautiful. And I looked in the little harbor there. I'm not a boating person. I don't know the terms, but it's a harbor. I don't know. There's docks and ropes and stuff. And there's probably 50 to 60 $20 million yachts. And I'm like, wow. And then you see a tiny boat next to it and you're like, wonder how much that one is. Oh no, that's like a $1 million yacht.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just crazy. Like these people, there's so much of abundance of money, and there's so much an abundance of resources that it's hardly ever a lack of resources. It's just that people don't know how to get them or use them.
Yeah. Was there certain books for you that like kind
Oh
of
man, I read
like,
nonstop. Yeah. So
like what was the first like aha book moment for you?
my first aha book was honestly Grant Cardone's book, Sell or Be Sold.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's the first time I read a book that wasn't like I read a lot of history books growing up. I liked history. I liked health stuff. So I'd read green books. I read all that kind of stuff. But it was the first time I read a book where I was like taking notes while I was reading a book.
Yeah.
Like sitting down, like, holy crap, this is crazy. Like I have to work on this and this and this. And it made me realize very quickly, like I knew nothing about business at all. And that was after I'd already like gone broke on my first practice. I was an associate in a different practice, and I was starting to learn like, okay, I can do this. I just have to train at this, just like I had to train at how to adjust a spine, just like I had to train at how to, wrestle when I was growing up. Like it's a skill that you have to learn and train on. And so you're going to make mistakes, and then you correct those mistakes. And if you don't correct those mistakes, you'll have the same bad habit over and over. And that was the first book that opened me up. And then I just started reading a bunch of Grant Cardone stuff. Like I read everything he put out. And some of it was like, okay, cool. And then most of it's just really good. And then I started reading like Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I was like, man, why did I not have this growing up? This would have been amazing to read growing up,
That was my first one. Rich Dad Poor Dad was my first. And I think about my dad and my uncle. They're farmers. And my dad, enough. I wouldn't say we were poor, but we weren't rich. But I look at my uncle and the way he's managed money compared to my dad, and it literally is it's just a different mindset, even though they grew up in the same household. But it's amazing the difference of like same environment. They do the same thing. They actually work for the same, like the Bremner farms, but the difference of how much more money my uncle has.
Yeah, it's honestly mind blowing to me that you can have like, because my dad and uncle are kind of the same way. They're both electricians. My uncle managed his money a lot better than my dad did, and my dad would like talk bad about that, which was interesting to me. He's like, "Oh yeah, you're rich, uncle." I'm like, "Don't you guys do the same thing? Like you're both electricians. They're both union electricians." And
yeah, families. I find that families, they really try to tear each other. The hardest thing to get out of poverty is your family, because you become guilty. People, the mindset of, oh, that must make me a bad person if I make more money than my family, or I've, makes my dad feel bad or whatever. And, the rich people are evil kind of mindset, which is if you grew up in that's tricky to get out of.
Yeah, very, very tricky. And I mean, like how I grew up, where I grew up, even a lot of the music I listen, I love like folk music, like country music, Americana,
Yeah.
like not bro country. Let's just set the record straight on that one. What I call butt country. It's anything but country. But I listen to a lot of that stuff, and a lot of it is a very poor mindset. But I like the rhythm of it.
I know.
I like the emotion of it and the feeling of it. But it's interesting. But the family part is crazy. But the first time I ever heard somebody talk about money in a way that I was blown away, I was at a chiropractic seminar. It was right as I was going through the I'm broke, how am I going to pay my bills, feed my kids, etc. And I won't say who it is because he's got a bad track record of being a bit of a kook with his money, of how he spends it. But what he said was very impactful, so it doesn't negate what he said. And he was talking to his mom, who was very broken, poor, and said, hey mom, I'm going to go catch you up on your bills. Give me all these envelopes. I'm going to go pay. I'm going to write checks to all these companies, your electric bill, your mortgage, et cetera, that you're behind on. I'm going to catch you back up. And it totaled almost $20,000, credit card bills, all this stuff, right? He just went over to her house one day and did it. And she was like crying. She's like, no, you can't do that. That's too much money. Like, how would you ever do that? And he said, well, mom, this was what I had left over from this month's revenue, and all my bills are paid. I have savings in the bank, and next month I'm going to have another 20,000 left over. And then the next month I'm going to have another 20,000 left over. And the next month and it just kept going. And he's like, so it doesn't hurt me to miss that 20 grand for a month to catch you up on your bills. Like, it's okay. And I remember sitting there thinking like, man, I couldn't imagine having 20,000 extra dollars just sitting around, that I'm like, oh, here, you can just have this, take it, And I mean, and in business, you go through ebbs and flows. You go through times when you're like, holy crap, I wish I had that extra $20,000. And then you go through times when you're like, holy, like I can't even do anything with all the money you have. Right.
Yeah,
So
it's proportional though. Like, $1, like when you only make $100, giving $1 away, no big deal, right? When you make $100,000, then $1,000, no big deal. And just it's all relative, but it's the same thing. It's the mindset of like, this is no big deal for me.
yeah.
And if it's no big, that's the thing that's weird when I talk to students, is that you have to be thinking about money, but you can't like hold on to it as tight as you possibly can, because then you just squeeze it and you've lost the energy going back and forth. It's a very weird, like, I want money, but like, no big deal. It's like, it's kind of just, if you're stressed, then that's when you have bad months. That's when you get stressed out.
Yeah, definitely. I just had a call with a friend today about that, but something that I'm trying to implement more and more as I grow and mature and develop. And I still consider myself a very young chiropractor, but Warren Buffett talks about how, like, this dude has billions of dollars, right? And he talks about how he doesn't disrespect money no matter what value it is. Because if you disrespect a dollar, then you'll never be trusted with $1 million. And so it's something that I'm like, okay, I don't have to be scared of money. I don't have to be scared of spending money, but I need to be respectful and conscientious of where that money's going, so that I will be rewarded later on with more money.
Yeah, if you don't give it a job, they'll just go away. And even if that job is, I'm putting this towards a fund that I'm totally going to blow, that's fine. But you got to give it a job. When I was in a different franchise, we used to respect money by, like, if there was a penny on the ground, like, pick it up. Let's tell the universe you're always accepting money. And we would like get on the ground and roll and fight, like trying to get that penny off the ground. But every time I find a penny, I'm like, oh, new patient tomorrow.
Yeah. No, it's important. But yeah, I mean, like we were, as far as like from a business perspective, I mean, I think it's something that, like, people are scared to talk about money to other people, right? Whether that's a patient in front of you, whether that's your friend, people just don't like talking about money for whatever reason. And it's so pounded into our brains. Like, if you want to ruin a party, there's 3 things you don't bring up: politics, religion, and money, right?
Yeah.
It's always but if you, like, I can disagree with people about all 3 of those things and still love them as a human being, still respect them, and still like be like, oh yeah, you made a good point there, right? That's called being an adult. And so if you're not immature, then yes, you can talk about religion, politics, money, and have a civil conversation about it. And so in a business setting, you have to be not only comfortable, but excited to talk about money.
Definitely. You have to be excited. Well, let's talk about then the good news that started happening for you. So you have 4 offices now. Tell me about how that happened. I'm sure you started with 1 and then multiplied.
Yeah. So we joined a franchise, and I don't like, you don't have to join a franchise to open multiple practices. I needed something. I'm a very all over the place type person. If I'm let loose, I will follow 0 systems, and the system is whatever I think of that day. And I will be all over the place and not have anything done productive wise. So I sat down with my wife and said, look, I need to join something. I need to be part of something that forces me. I have to follow a system, and I have to do it this way. Because once I do that, I know I'll be a badass at it, but I have to do it this way. And so I was a part of a different franchise in school, and just like in the student program or whatever. And then when I heard about 100%, I was like, well, I don't know. Sounds really expensive. Sounds like they're going to make me do stuff I don't want to do, and I don't want to do it. And so I researched it more, and I was like, I don't know, I'll try it. I'm desperate. So I took a job, and I started as an associate, and I really liked the systems. And so I'm like, okay, well, this aligns with my core values, and they're showing me how to run a business. I think it's great. So when we started our first practice, my wife went in there, and I was still an associate at the other office. I was transferring over, and she went in there and just crushed it right out of the gate. And I was like, whoa, this is really cool. Because I was in an established practice. So I was thinking like, well, how fast can you do this? And within a month, she was clearing overhead, and not small overhead either, like real deal, full staff, like big facility, that kind of thing. And so as I joined her, we started like doubling up on it, realizing like we had it running to such a well-oiled machine that it felt like we couldn't mess up if we tried, is how it felt. I know that's not the case, but we were just like, yeah, like everyone's signing up for care. Everyone's prepaying for their care. It's boom, 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 boom. And as we saw that one office was really successful, it made us like, okay, well, let's reproduce ourselves, because at the end of the day, there's limitation to matter. And I can't adjust everybody that I want to adjust. I can't see everybody I need to see. And so if our vision is really to change healthcare, then I think we have to expand on our skill set and what we're good at. So if we're really good at inspiring people for chiropractic and helping them reach a potential they've never seen before, then we need to teach other people how to do that by opening other offices. So we had our second office, and that one is in the same town. We had never thought about opening one outside of like where we could drive to, because both of my offices are within 15 minutes of my house. So it's like, great, if I need to go do something, I can drive to that office and check on it. So
Yeah.
opening offices outside of our like driving radius was a little scary. So we did Tulsa and Claremont, and those are more recent. They're both picking up pretty quick, actually. And with those out of town offices, that's the part that's it's humbled me a lot in my ability to train teams and to pour into people, because I can't just drive down the road and be in person and check on them. Like I have to get on a flight, block my patient schedule off, and say, okay, none of my patients are going to come in these days. And now I'm going to go to Florida for 4 days and help my clinic director. Right.
Yeah,
So
you can't
that's
just so you just can't just step in and do it, right? You can't just be like, move over, I'll just fix this, or if something bad happens, you can't, you really have to make sure that those are well-oiled systems. So how would you say, like, running those out of town offices, what's the number one key for that?
I keep them on a short leash, but not in like I don't think I'm an asshole of a boss. I don't know. But I have very clear expectations, and then I just follow up on those expectations. And so, but they knew that when they signed the contract to be an employee of mine, right? So it's like, great, you're going to be part of my team. Here's how we carry ourselves. This is how we dress. This is how we act. This is how we talk to patients. This is what we don't do in the office. Very simple. And so the nice part is, because my family's in Tulsa, my wife's family's in Florida. So our families are patients in those offices. So one day my brother walks in and can just like take a picture of the office, of how it looks, take a little video of how my CA sounds on the phone. Like he's there to get adjusted. But he's
Yeah.
like, hey, Are you cool
Like,
with all this? I'm like, whoa, I'm not cool with that. Or yeah, it's going good, and it's a nice little check-in. So that is one advantage I do have, is that I put it in offices where my family was, so they can be my, ears to the ground, I guess. But the remote part of it, like I had a clinic director just walk out on me in my Tulsa office.
oh man.
So I was out of town. I was in Chicago at a business conference, and I think it was like a Friday night, because I think I was supposed to fly back Saturday. It was a Friday night, and I get an email at like 8 o'clock at night. The clinic director's like, "Hey, I'm done. I quit. I'm not coming back." And I was really hard on him like 2 weeks prior, because he wasn't holding up his end of the deal. He was dropping off on patient care. He wasn't even doing stuff that he was supposed to be doing as a chiropractor, let alone what he was supposed to do as a clinic director helping run the business. And so he quit. And luckily, I had a temporary license already applied for in Oklahoma, because in Oklahoma, you don't have to have a license there to own a practice. So luckily, I already have my temporary license. I didn't have a permanent license yet, but I had my temporary license. And so I called the board and I was like, "Can I practice with this temporary license?" And they're like, "Well, that's what it's for, ding dong." I was like, "Okay, cool. Just making sure. Don't want to go to jail or like lose my Colorado license." And so I showed up. I'd never met any of these patients except one of them, because I'd visited the clinic one time. And I show up and have to be like, "Hey, your clinic director quit. And so I'm here to take care of you till I find a new doc." Whether that's a week, 2 weeks, I have no idea. And finding a chiropractor in Tulsa, Oklahoma that will come work for you, not the easiest feat. So I had everybody I knew reaching out and finding somebody. We found this great couple, but that's the part, that's the beauty. Like everybody sees, oh, you have 4 practices. What about the times when you have to fly across the country and cover it because your clinic director just quits overnight, And so
Yeah, it's one
just
of those must be nice things, right? Which I think,
yeah.
which is like my favorite thing to get. If you want to compliment me, I'll say something and you say must be nice. Then I know that then I've crushed it. Because yeah, guess what? It's nice, but you don't see behind the scenes when shit like that happens. And man, I can't even imagine how stressful that I was. Like I got stressed when one of my associates quit, who I wanted to quit. And then I would, but it was like stressful for me to replace them, right? So
Yeah.
that, man, I give it to you on that. That's
The
another
hardest
level
part,
of stress.
honestly, the hardest part, because I went in there and cleaned up a bunch of systems, and we like turned it around. Like it was just a matter of me going in there and knowing how to run those systems, and have been doing it a long time. I go in there like, "Oh, the CAs aren't doing this right, this right, this right. Great. Let's wipe the slate clean, girls. I'm going to show you how to do this." And they actually appreciated it. But the hardest part was I was gone for like a week at this conference. I come home, and I was home for 10 hours. And then I got on a flight to fly to Tulsa. So I saw my 3 kids for 10 hours. And a lot of that was them sleeping. So I actually saw them for like 2 or 3 hours. And I was like, "All right, kids, sorry, I got to fly out to Tulsa tomorrow." And my 3-year-old's like, "Where are you going?" I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is like," that was the hardest part.
Yeah.
I get too about how tired I am or whatever. But like when my kids are like, "Oh, you're abandoning us," but it was funny because they were calling me. They're like, "When are you coming back?" I was like, "I don't know. We'll figure it out."
But
But
stuff like that though, right? You do it, you get through it, then you're just like so much more rock solid in your systems and what you're doing. And you're kind of like, "Psh, bring it on. Like, I'm fine. Right. Like that's sort of the attitude I feel like when I get through something like that. I may haven't dealt with something specific like that, but in general, I think that that's kind of, if you are meant to be a business owner, and here's the thing. So a lot of young docs listen to it. You might not be ever a business owner, and that's okay, because you have to be kind of weird. You got to be off. Something's off with you if you like really want to like own a bunch of businesses and run them, because things happen that are unpredictable and you have to be able to handle that mentally.
yeah, I mean, you have to be okay with controlled chaos is really what it is. I mean, it's like, if we're being honest, it's knowing that things are going to happen that are outside of your control that you don't want to happen, and you're scared of them. And then once they happen, you're like, "Oh, it wasn't that bad." Like one of my fears was that I would have a doctor just walk out on me on one of my out of town practices.
Yeah.
And
There you
when
go.
I got through it, I'm like, okay, it wasn't even that big of a deal. I was gone for 2 weeks. I
Yeah.
was gone for a week, came home on the weekend, saw my kids, and then was gone for another week, and that was it.
So let's talk about like, so students listening to this, when you're looking for an associate or a clinic director or someone to work for you, what would you say are the qualities that you like, it sticks out and you're like, that person's gonna be a rock star?
I mean, one, they have to be able to adjust and deliver the goods. So that's a given. Like if you can't adjust, learn how to adjust and then go apply for a job. But aside from that, assuming they can adjust, they have to have one, carry themselves with a professionalism and almost like a confidence, not a cockiness, but a confidence in what they do and how they talk to people. Their body language when they speak, their attitude of how they talk about certain things. I don't hire anybody who has a negative mindset. I will not do it. I won't have them work for me in any capacity. So I listen to little cues. So if they, oh, my flight got delayed. This, and they're just bitching and moaning about things that aren't that big of a deal. I'm like, well, if you think that's a big deal, wait till I come down on your ass about how this is late. This is not done right. This is like, you're going to think I'm just crushing your whole world. And so I don't do well with the whole victim mentality thing.
You don't say.
But honestly, yeah. But honestly, like I look for the person who has confidence in themselves because people anchor themselves to an anchored mind. So if they have confidence in themselves and how they will be a good chiropractor, the patient will trust that and have confidence in them and how they're a good chiropractor.
Yeah, absolutely. The analogy I give, I have not found a straight female analogy of this, but what it is picking up a girl in a bar. If you're a dude or a lesbian that can go to a bar, pick up, a girl at the bar, that is the same skill set and confidence of getting new patients. Now, I'm not talking, it's like, I'm not saying pick up your patients, but I'm saying that you hold yourself with confidence. You are, you don't really care if there's rejection, and you're like, the best decision for you is me.
Yeah. I mean, and that's another good point is in business. See, we think of practice as a business, but they're two separate entities. You have your practice where you take care of your patients in whatever capacity that is, whether it's, CBP, upper cervical, is it network? I don't care, but you're taking care of your patients. That is your practice, right? But your business is what funds and feeds that practice. And without the business, you can't see those patients unless you're doing it pro bono and you're living on the streets, or mommy and daddy, you're paying for your house. I don't know. Right. So you have to have the business aspect to run that practice. And I think we think that like, oh, I have this practice. But I mean, if you ask somebody, okay, you own a practice, great. And you start asking them about KPIs, right? You start asking them about the actual performance of their business and they don't know. Then they don't own a business. They own a job. And their job is they take care of their patients and somehow it pays their bills. So they're not necessarily a business person. They're a chiropractor that has a practice that is pulling enough revenue to where it's able to pay their bills. But that is not a business. A business has goals set forth. It has KPIs that you're measuring. It has like basements of, hey, we have to collect this amount or we can't keep these team members, right?
Yeah.
Then we're shooting for this, right? This is where we need to ride all the time on an average. And so that's running a business, not just a practice. A practice is, hey, we're going to see this many new patients. We're going to see this many people a day. We're going to do x-rays this often, like whatever. That's running a practice. Those are two different things.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you brought that up. Some things that like drive me nuts, like from the stage or at seminars, is just like, oh, just be of service and the business will come. And I'm like, what the, like, why do you keep doing that? Like, you can be both. You can be of service and make a lot of money, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you like refuse to focus on, yeah, your numbers, your overhead, your OVA, your case visit, like knowing how much each patient is worth. So then you're like, okay, I need this. So you make patient goals that actually make sense based on the monetary amount that they bring in. And then it's like, oh, it's like dehumanizing them or something. But that's nuts. It's two separate things where they come in and you're of loving service and you're taking care of them. But you gotta know how many patients you need to keep the doors open and pay your bills.
That and a number that a lot of people don't know is, what does it cost you every time you adjust a patient? So like people think like, oh, I gave a free adjustment. No, you paid to give that adjustment. If you have a practice that's brick and mortar and you have overhead, you just paid to give that adjustment because you have overhead to pay.
You're saying if you give a free adjustment away.
Right. So giving a free adjustment, you actually paid out to give that quote free adjustment.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it costs money per adjustment to give. And
That's
and I used to give everything away. Oh my goodness. I fell into that trap of like, oh, just put a box on the wall and throw cash into it and let patients choose what their fee. That's a good way to not feed your kids. Maybe somebody's better at it than me. Probably. Obviously there are, but to me, like the more I've talked business with patients in the practice, the more they respect me and respect me even as their chiropractor. Like, oh my goodness, like, yeah, you've got a good head on your shoulders. You're not just all in here willy-nilly, because they know that if you're paying close attention to your business, you're also paying close attention to their care. You're paying close attention to how your team is trained. You're paying close attention to every aspect of that because you're dialed in. And
yeah,
people
and
think
they
it'd be the
want
other
to be
way around.
told what.
It's like negative. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, it's not negative. It's not negative at all. And they want to be told what to do, quite frankly.
Yeah.
So the more that you are, like you're saying, focus on it and you're like, this is what it costs. This is the rules to be in here. And they're like, yeah, I need rules. Because most people are so undisciplined that they come into your office and they're like, this is the best thing ever. Because like I just turn my brain off. I come, you tell me what to do, you tell me what to pay, you tell me you want to be here. Great, love it. They have a great experience. The willy-nilly like craziness of if you're in an office that like is not well, like they're not on time, the pricing is weird, it's like that is chaos, and your care will be chaos because of it.
Yeah. And you'll have a really big backdoor issue because people might trust you for a little while and they like you. And then they're like, okay, and I like you. You're a nice person. You're great at giving an adjustment, but this is stressful. Like I can't do it.
Yeah, totally. Well, we're coming kind of to the end here. So I like to end this with thinking about your absolute best business decision you ever made and your absolute worst one.
Okay. So yeah, I'll start with the worst. The absolute worst business decision I ever made. I don't know if it's actually like a monetary decision, but it was thinking that I knew everything just because like, oh, I have a degree and it's framed and it was, it's 2 feet wide. And so it's big and I know everything, but I don't have a doctorate in business. So like the biggest mistake I made in business was thinking that I knew about business. Right. And so being kind of arrogant, like, oh yeah, it's fine. The best decision I ever made was the flip side of that of reaching out to mentors and humbling myself and being okay with being honest with people. Like, I don't know how to do this. Like I'm struggling. I can't pay my bills. Can you teach me? And what's really cool, honestly, is in the chiropractic profession, there's a lot of people who do that for free. They will give you little tidbits. They'll log into your office and be like, okay, let me look at your stuff. Let me, walk me through it. Let me help you. Because they just like, we want other chiropractors to be successful. Right.
Yeah.
So a lot of people will do that. And so I got some great advice from just humbling myself and being like, yeah, I'm a great chiropractor. I can adjust a spine, but I do not know how to run a business. I can run a practice, not a business. And so getting advice from people, it wasn't like a decision like, oh yeah, my best decision was to open 4 practices or whatever. No, it's just having the mindset of being a business person who is also a doctor of chiropractic.
Yeah, I think that's great. And really your reality is whatever your mindset is. So if you decide that it's one thing, then you're going to be successful. If you don't address things that you need to, you're going to struggle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, have those hard conversations. You can choose your own,
Yes,
It's hard to be
absolutely.
broke. It's hard to be rich. Both are hard,
Problems come both ways. Well, anything else, Doc, that you think that young students, young chiropractors should know?
No, I mean, the biggest thing is knowing that you don't know everything and knowing that you never will. Like, I'm constantly learning, always, because there's the old expression, and we can end with this, but there's the old expression of like, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. And I take that quote a little differently, because I don't think it's about an IQ score or how much book knowledge you know or how much experience you have. It's that if you're the type of person who thinks you're the smartest person in the room and you're not willing to learn from other people in the room, then you shouldn't be in that room. And so like when I go to a seminar like Mile High, when I go to even non-chiropractic seminars, I was speaking at a natural health seminar and I was taking stuff from other people like, man, that's really cool. I love the way they explained that. I love the way they did that. Like, and you can always learn I learn stuff from my kids. My kids will explain chiropractic to their friends. And I'm like, holy crap, I need to start using that on patients. That's great. It's so simple. Like I'm over analyzing it, It's
Yeah,
cool.
definitely. Well, awesome. I really appreciate you coming on tonight, Doc. And yeah, so, guys, we're just trying to help you out here because a lot of times chiropractors fall on their face because they think they know everything. They think that they don't need to know business and all they need to do is adjust. And that's not true. So I'm sure Dr. Ryan would be happy to, if you reach out to him, he would chat with you. I'm always happy. We'll leave our emails below. And this is Cultivating Success. And we just want to help you guys out. That's it. See ya.